101. Here with us we have Jim Johansson, our Land Protection Director at JECF, and I'm Jessica Carrier, you guys know me. We're out here at Blanding Landing Recreation Area, and it's a little windy today, so when we post a video later on, the sound quality will hopefully be a little bit better than it is right now. We'll do our best. Canoeing. Canoeing's a great way to see Joe Davis County area. There's a lot of rivers that meander throughout the bluffy, hilly areas. The rivers in our area are really the wildest places that you're going to find. They connect wildlife habitat corridors and allow wildlife to travel longer distances. And the views from your river are going to be completely different than the views from the road or a trail. You're right there on the top of the water, and you're going to see a lot more birds and reptiles, turtles a lot of times you see. Totally different views from the rivers. Today Jim's going to show us a few things about how to plan a paddling trip, and then we're going to get in the water and we're going to do a few strokes. So, Jim, you have a few books with you.
I do.
Can you tell us a little bit about these books and why you like these?
Sure. Wisconsin. These kind of cover most of the streams available in our tri-state area. At home, I've got, I think, Paddling Northern Minnesota and Paddling Northern Wisconsin as well. And what I really like about these is if you're trying out a new canoe route or kayak route, these have a lot of the information you're going to need. It's going to have a map of the route. It's going to have where you put in your boat, where you take out, how long of a shuttle that you're going to need to run between the put-in point and the take-out point, any major obstacles you might run into along the way, such as the dams or bridges or, in some cases, even fences that are strung across the river. Another great guide for planning new paddling trips is a website called milespaddled.com. It's run by a few people out of the Madison area that travel around Wisconsin and adjoining states.
Say the title of that again?
Yeah, it's milespaddled.com. And they, seems to be their goal in life is to paddle as many streams and lakes as possible and then catalog what they encounter. So one of the, besides just knowing the basic information about where to put in and where to take out and obstacles along the way like rapids, we probably don't have many rapids here in the Joe Davis County area. We'll probably have just riffles and class 1s. But if you go a little bit further up north where you have a little bit of elevation, you might get into some class 2 and 3 rapids, and those are things you want to look out for. But it'll also have information about access. So one of the things you need to think about as you're planning a paddling trip or maybe going somewhere you haven't been before is whether the stream is publicly accessible or not. And the laws that govern stream access are a little bit different in each state. So if you're paddling in Iowa or Wisconsin, in those states, all waters are considered public waters. You can pretty much paddle anywhere that's deep enough to float your boat. The only thing you have to watch out for there is the property rights of land adjoining the stream. So always make sure that you're accessing from a public area or from a bridge. That if you see no trespassing signs, then it's probably not a good place to put in your boat or take it out. In Illinois, things are a little bit different. The Illinois Department of Natural Resources, in their administrative code, maintains a list of streams that are considered publicly accessible. And that list is surprisingly small. We can probably post a link to that map and that list on our Facebook page after we're done here. But the strange thing about paddling streams in Illinois is even if a stream isn't considered legally publicly accessible under the administrative code, there are plenty of streams that are paddled nonetheless, simply because the landowners along those streams don't seem to mind it. But if there's any doubt about whether a stream that you want to do is publicly accessible or not, err on the side of caution. Do a quick Google search. Check out that blog that I mentioned earlier, milespaddled.com. And if you're really unsure, you can even ask the landowners along the route for permission. The last thing we want is to get into an angry landowner situation.
Good. So that's a little bit about kind of the maps and things. How about obstacles that you might run into in the water? As you're planning your trip, you can look at all the maps, but sometimes there's obstacles that aren't on the maps.
Right. Well, first off, you probably levels. We're down here at Blanding Landing on the mighty Mississippi, and I can tell you with pretty much 100% certainty that there's always going to be enough water in the Mississippi River to paddle. That might not always be the case on some of the other streams like the Apple River or the Galena River or the Little Maquoketa River over in Dubuque. Again, a lot of online blogs will tell you how much water you want to have in the stream in order to float comfortably. It's to make sure you have enough water. I did a trip just last Saturday on the Fever River up in Lafayette County, Wisconsin, and it was too low, but it was fun nonetheless. So assuming you have enough water for your trip, you want to keep an eye out, particularly in this area where there's a lot of cattle grazing, for fences across the river. Farmers will string usually an electric fence across the river, which can really ruin a nice day on the river if you're not keeping your eyes peeled. More common kind of throughout the tri-state area are just downed trees. You might have the trunk of a tree that's fallen and it's just sitting a few feet above the surface of the water. We call those sweepers, because if your boat goes right, but it's going to sweep whatever people are sitting in the boat right out of there. Another, a strainer is a tree that's fallen down and it has a bunch of branches kind of crisscrossed poking out of the water. And again, the water branches, but most of the time a boat cannot. If you run into those and you're don't think you can make it through, highly encourage a portage where you basically pull off to the side of the river and schlep your boat around the obstacle until you're clear of it and you can get back in the water safely. Those are the three main things you really need to worry about. I guess there's always a chance that if you find an area of low water with a bunch of rocks, you could find just that one boulder that's perfectly positioned to roll your boat. We don't have many dams around here. The only one I can think of is the dam on the Apple River there in downtown Hanover. You never want to go over a dam in a boat, especially a low head dam, which kind of creates a little backwards current that can actually hold a capsized boat or a capsized paddler underwater. There have been a lot of accidents on those low head dams in recent years in other parts of the state. So I guess the bottom line is if you're doing a new route, do your homework ahead of time. Know what you're getting into. Don't just throw your boat in the water and hope for the best. Otherwise, you're probably going to ruin what would otherwise be a pretty nice day.
Those are wise words. Know your water and know your skill. Okay, so now we should talk about safety gear before we jump in the water here. So, what do we have with us?
We have a PF personal flotation device, or packets, but if you want to be fancy and sound like you know what you're doing, you'd call them PFD. Under state law, you have every person in the boat. You just boat, otherwise you run the risk the conservation police. But Be safe.
Always a good idea.
Make sure it's nice and snug. I'm going to make sure I'm not accidentally covering up my microphone here. Make sure I can actually get the buckle straight too.
Sometimes if it's cold out, life jacket will keep you warm.
Life jacket will keep you very warm on a nice cold day. Yeah, and the important thing is just to make sure it's not going to slip up past your head if you're in the water. You need to get it tight enough. I'm not going to tighten mine all the way just so I don't accidentally cover up my microphone here. So I'm primarily a canoer. I do a little bit of kayaking, but if you're canoeing, you get to bring a buddy. So I'm going to go over just a couple of basic canoe canoe strokes, as well as just the kind of basics between steering and powering a canoe. So when you're canoeing, you have two people, one person in the back. Whoever's in the back is responsible for steering. You're steering the boat, so if you tip over, it's probably the fault of whoever's in the back. The person in front, which is going to be Jess, is the power person. She's the gas pedal. It's her job to make sure that we've got enough gas to, on a day like today, make it into the wind. So the wind today is actually kind of nice because it gives us a chance to show a couple of more advanced paddle techniques that you can use if you're battling the wind and trying to maybe go into the wind or cut crossways across the wind. So you've got your basic canoe stroke, enter in the water up front, pull all the way back. You're going to get the most power behind your stroke if you keep both arms straight. A lot of people like to keep their elbows bent and do like this. You get a shorter stroke, but if you have enough muscle and you can keep both of your arms straight, you can put your paddle in all the way out here, straighten your top arm, and pull all the way back. And if you need to switch to the other side, you can just slide your hand up, switch hands, go to the other side. Now if you're in the back, well, before I talk about that, on a day like today when it's real windy, you might have a lot of wind resistance and you want to minimize the number of flat surfaces that might catch the wind. In that case, you can do something with the blade of your oar. It's called feathering. Most people, when they pull their oar out of the water at the back end of their stroke, tend to just move it right up like this. If you're going into the wind, that's going to create more wind resistance. So at the back of your stroke, when you take your oar out of the water, you can just turn your wrist down like that so that you're minimizing your wind resistance. Turn your wrist back down, put it back in the water, and continue your stroke. So back, feather up, stroke, and then feather up. It may seem like it doesn't make much of a difference, but if you're in the boundary waters and you have to go 12 miles into the wind, it makes a lot of difference in the long run. So one thing you can also do, well, and I should also say, when you're steering a canoe, if you're paddling on the right side, eventually your boat is going to start turning further and further to the left. So in order to correct that back to the right, you're just going to want to switch sides and paddle on the left. If you're paddling on the left, the boat's going to eventually turn more and more to the right. If you're coming up on an obstacle and you need to turn quickly, you can always drag. Just plant your oar in the water and hold it there. If you drag on the right side, the boat's going to turn right. If you drag on the left side, the boat's going to turn left. However, if you're trying to maintain momentum, just dragging your oar is probably not the best way to do it. One thing you can do is called a J stroke, and a J stroke is your classic canoe stroke, but with a little flip at the end. So you're basically making a J shape with your paddle. You go in at the front of your stroke, pull back, and right before you take it out of the water, you just give it a little flip at the end. So you're kind of making a J shape. And what that little flip at the end will do is it'll pull your boat slightly back straight to the direction where you're heading. Because if you're just canoeing normal stroke over and over again on the right side, like I said, eventually you're going to turn left and left and left. And that J stroke will help correct you so you stay straight. Another thing you can do is called a C stroke. Again, kind of shaped like a C. It's just a long, wide stroke where you start at the top and kind of fan out far away from your boat. A C stroke will, again, help you stay on your course if you're trying to battle the wind. Doing a C stroke on the right side of your boat is going to push you towards the left. Doing a C stroke on the left side of your boat is going to push you towards the right. The last two strokes I'm going to talk about, it's called a draw and a quarter draw. A draw is pretty basic. If you're sitting in your boat, a draw is just paddling straight towards the boat. And what that's going to do is it's going to swing the end of your boat in the direction that you're drawing. So that can be really helpful if you're trying to cut crossways against the wind. And the last thing is called a quarter draw. It's just like a normal draw, but instead of paddling kind of at a 90-degree angle to your boat, you're paddling kind of at a 45-degree angle to your boat. And again, that's probably something you're only going to do if you're trying to cut across a weird current or cut into the wind. So, that was a lot of information real quick. Maybe we should try to get on the water and try to put this into practice.
Good, yeah.
All right. So I've got wheels on my boat because this thing is pretty heavy for one person. Would you mind giving me a hand, Jess? Perfect. So I'm going to be in the stern, and Jess is going to be in the bow, and we're a little tippy. When you're getting in and out of a boat, you kind of want to stay low. Keep your center of gravity low, you're less likely to tip over.
Narration.
Sure.
Okay.
So keep your center of gravity low. Keep one hand on each side of the canoe.
Weight in the middle.
Keep your weight in the middle of the boat, right down the center keel here, and you should be good. Now that she's in, I'm going to hop in, hand her paddle. And you can see the wind is already pushing Jess's end of the boat back around, so we're going to have to fight to get out around the end of the pier here. Here you go. And I'm going to paddle backwards right off the get-go, just to get us going where we want to. So again, if you're in the back, so here I'm doing a draw to kind of pull the boat closer to the pier. I know we're going backwards, and that's just something we have to do to get around the other side of the pier in this wind. But if you're in the back, you're the steerer, Jess is the power. All right, let's go around this way. Here's another draw. All right, perfect. So, we're facing west. The wind is out of the west. First thing I just want to show is feathering. If you want to minimize your wind resistance, when you take your oar out of the water at the back end of your stroke, tilt your hand down, feather, and then turn it back up right at the end. Do your next stroke. It'll make a lot of difference in the long run on a windy day. On your J stroke, you do your normal stroke, and then you just do that little flip at the end to kind of correct your course so you don't go too far off your intended target. Sorry, we keep having to push off the dock here because this wind is really making it a bit of a challenge. Here's a sea stroke, and if I do it right, it should push Jess's end of the boat more to the right, but we're still fighting the wind here. There's your sea stroke, kind of a nice wide arc far away from the boat. I can do it on this side too to try to correct. And last but not least, I'll show you the draw one more time. That'll help pull us more towards the pier. You can do it on the other side, pull us further away from the pier. And then the quarter draw, if you're trying to kind of cut diagonally into the wind, would look something like this, kind of pulling at your boat at a 45-degree angle. And that's just about it. The only thing I can think of, just in time for the freight train coming by, is maybe dragging your oar if you need to turn very quickly. Again, if you drag your oar on the right side, it'll turn your boat to the right. And if you drag your oar on the left side, it'll turn your boat to the left very quickly. So that's just about it. I think we'll post a couple of links on our Facebook page about some of the things we talked about. And
if anybody has questions right now, now's a great time to ask.
That's right.
Okay.
No questions? All right.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us for another Facebook Live event. We're going to probably paddle around a little bit, and then we'll see you guys on Thursday. So next Thursday. So thanks, guys.
See you later. So I think my microphone is still on, so now I can talk about all the nice water lilies that are off on our right, all the duckweed that's coating the surface of the river. Beautiful day to be out.